We received the minutes from the, March 11th meeting. And are there any changes or additions to that? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Mhm. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are approved on that. Since there's nobody in the audience, we don't have to go through our long announcement. Item number 5 is election of officers. So how do we handle this?
Well, there's two officers, the chair and the vice chair. And, we have a chair and a vice chair, but at each year at this time, you elect officers. It can be the same ones or it can be different. But we have to go through that. When you were appointed chair and it was to fill the rest of the time that Kim wasn't here. So this will be for the next calendar year,
Okay.
from now till next April.
So are there nominations from the board?
I nominate you.
I'll accept.
Do we do
Then
them
we-
individually or?
Typically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you do the chair and then after that you do the vice chair.
Any further nominations on chair?
I move to close the nominations for chair.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we've closed the nomination. Okay. Then we'll open it up for vice chair. Are there nominations?
Continue? Retain.
Ted is our current vice chair.
Yeah, retain
Okay.
Ted.
Any other nominations?
Move to close again.
Okay. Second again.
Second. All
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well, we've got our slate here.
No,
It's corruption.
Okay. Next item is to discuss the Historic Preservation website in relation to Chapter 31. So,
All right, I'm going to take the lead on this. So here we are at the Ames Historic Preservation Commission webpage. I thought we'd start with this and look at it and get feedback from you. I know there was some discussion to look at Dubuque, so I have a link to that and we can go back and forth and I can, you can share your thoughts, what you think would be helpful to actually in working on this agenda item. What I learned is we have a lot of resources that we can draw from within our files.
okay.
So there may be things that we can add that aren't too cumbersome to time or staff to implement. But want to hear what your thoughts are on this. So so as you can see with this web page, what you see over here is on this drop-down menu, there's a few things under here also. But as far as the Historic Preservation Commission, it lists all the members. There's a link to the agenda and the supporting documents. There's also an archive of agenda and minutes from past meetings if you click on there. There's some background and purpose, and then there's some links here as well. So this is where you would go to, one of the places you would go to get to a COA application. There's also a processing schedule that just kind of explains how many days or what you may anticipate when to make application, what the process is for approval. There's a link to Chapter 31, which is the chapter we've talked a little bit about here, which oversees historic preservation in the city. There's a link to the Old Town District, and we can pull up some of these things as we discuss it further. There's a link to the walking tour brochure, and then there's a link to the Preservation Awards. Over here, there's a link to the comprehensive historic plan. There's a link to educational videos. There again, the current agenda and supporting documents, meetings archive, the National Register of Historic Places, and that's pretty much what's included here. I'll pull up Dubuque's real quick. Hopefully. What am I doing? Here we go. This is a link to their Historic Preservation Commission page. So one thing I would just say is I think it's similar, this part of Dubuque's site. But what I noticed with Dubuque is that this Historic Preservation Commission page is handled, I believe, under their, it's grouped with their other commissions. And so it's not really linked or under, they have another web subpage that's historic preservation, but this is the Historic Preservation Commission. So since we're starting with that, I thought I would compare apples to apples. So it talks a little bit about what kind of members and how you become a member, the appointment and so forth, when the meetings are held, agendas and minutes, the purpose. So it seems similar to ours in this regard. Any comments on that part so far? Do you want to go faster or slower? We're doing okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay,
Megan,
so
do you know what we're doing here?
You know, I'm picking it up.
You got a fresh set of eyes. We're trying to make our webpage better.
Okay.
Essentially is the short story.
Sure. Okay, great.
So this is Dubuque's page that you find. It's actually listed under as a department, but it's really under planning. So I'm not sure why it's that way, but historic. So they have a link to historic preservation. These pictures rotate in and out. They have a little bit about just history of preservation in Dubuque, and then they go on to have things on this side, some of which are things that we haven't highlighted on our webpage or within our resources that we haven't included. Or if we have included them, they may not be as easy to find as what they've done here. They also have this link on the right that continues throughout their documents. So the contact us is something they have that reoccurs on every page. And this thing at the bottom, don't do it alone, that's something that is through planning that they kind of put in there on every page. So it's a way to contact staff, basically.
Can you make that one step larger? Control plus might work.
Maybe. Whoops. Well, I think I can do this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a new toy for me. So let's see if I can. Oops. Zip, zip. Well,
Maybe not.
what did you want larger? Which part?
I just wanted to be able to read it without checking out this one. It was hurting my neck.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Okay.
So what it looks like to me is their listing for the commission is virtually the same as ours.
Pretty
But
simple.
then they have this educational page
Mhm.
that gives a lot more background, not just what ours has links to some of the procedural items, the applications and stuff. But this gives more
Historic.
discussion of it, I guess.
Could you click on architectural guidelines?
Yes.
So if you go down a bit, this is what I think is valuable. The images on the bottom are pulled from the document, I think on the top right. And you can see the green light, yellow light, red light. And it's, again, I said this at the last meeting, it's just an attempt to make this process of design review as clear as humanly possible. And I think that's the principal value of this site, in addition to all the other educational stuff. And I know they have all their districts mapped and they have quite a few more than we do, but this is what I thought you guys should see.
Okay.
And if you click on is that a PDF on the top right there? So I think, and this was commissioned by the Preservation Commission. I think it wasn't done in-house, if I'm not mistaken, but if you just want to kind of page through that quickly or just look at a few pages and give you a sense of what they're going for here.
Try to zoom back out, I reckon.
That's nice.
So we don't have this. If this is something you want to pursue, this would be something to talk with the city council about when I think you may recall I mentioned that they wanted to have a face-to-face with you, and I haven't heard anything further on a date. I think we were thinking in May, so I think at the next meeting might be a good time to kind of gear up for that meeting. That would probably be later in May, and it'll just be on the council's agenda that they would have you there to speak, to have a dialogue with as part of their regular meeting. It wouldn't be a separate meeting for the city council.
Okay.
So what we do have in our code, bear with me a minute. I know. What I wanted to just show you is in chapter 31. Oops. There we go. I'll get there eventually. Okay. In chapter 31, we have our design guidelines, but there are no graphics. So, but
A lot.
so for example, here are the design guidelines for alterations. And it's all just embedded in the code. Design, there's the criteria for alterations, for new construction, and for demolition. And so it's not particularly handy for somebody just to read it, but there's no graphics associated with it. But the first step could be to just pull those design guidelines out of the code and make it a standalone go-to on the website. So somebody could see the guidelines for whatever they're trying to do, whether it's new construction or rehabilitation.
Yeah,
Alteration.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm guessing that Dubuque probably has something virtually the same thing, but it's just that by putting it with some graphics and makes it a little easier for the public to get into it.
Right.
I mean, it,
A little more user-friendly.
yeah, it's always hard for people to just go to a set of regulations and start reading through them. And so I think there is some real value into creating some kind of a interface there that sort of helps illustrate things for people. But
And one thing we were talking about internally is that most people, when they come to the city to do something on their house or their garage or whatever in Old Town, they start by just calling and inquiring, and they may have the application, but they'll just fill it out to their best. And there's a lot of stuff that they don't have a clue about. Like, they don't know about the design guidelines, and they don't really have to address the design guidelines, particularly in the application. They do need to know what style their structure is. So oftentimes we provide them with that based from the inventory sheets as to if it's a Queen Anne or a bungalow or whatever. And then that gives them guidance on the criteria. But most of the time, nobody's sifting through that kind of material. They're just depending on staff to walk them through, which is fine. However, the exception to that is when you do have somebody who has hired an architect or a professional historian or someone to help them with the process, then those people will look for those kind of things on the website. So I think that we could beef up our website a bit with things we already have and provide them more easily to the public, including the staff contacts, so that you don't just have to find the tab on the left to go to staff contacts, that there's actually, something right there on that page. Like on the Historic Preservation Commission page, we don't have anything about staff contacts on that page.
Okay.
But it would be great to have graphics. My background's design, so I love graphics. I'm drawn to.
well, I think it is appropriate for us to bring this up with the council since they're asking for the meeting with us. And I don't know. I wouldn't have any idea what a budget for something like this would be, but
Well, and it would be a little bit far. It would have to be a whole more
In
than a
another
year
year.
from now, but because this year, the next fiscal budget's
Right.
already approved, of course.
So the first
Okay.
step is taking that PDF and just adding the graphics from the National Register, like the National
have
Design
some.
Standards, kind of.
The
Where we're getting the
first,
pictures from.
There's a lot of places you can get the pictures
Well, I
from.
think we just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe staff could take photos from our town. Or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Examples.
well, I think the first step would be to divide up our website so that we actually have, let me show you this.
Or perhaps a live document or an interactive application process would be useful too. Click here to apply, and then it walks you through.
So if we started out with it being called historic preservation and then had a subcategory historic properties, then under historic properties, we could have historic districts. We could have local landmarks, and we could have the National Register of Historic Places listings. Right now, we have the National Register of Historic Places listings, and we include in there our local landmarks. So everything's there, and I can pull that up so you can see it, what we have. But we currently don't have anything about down the Main Street Historic District yet.
Right.
However, there's a great link Whoops. Yes. So this is out there. It's amesdowntown.org has this link to the Ames Main Street District and talks about grants or had a grant to complete the nomination. And then here is a link to the actual nomination form with all 152 pages. But
Nice.
there's great pictures, you know, there's a map.
Did you make that?
There's a map. And so the map can be extracted and shown as a separate link.
Yeah.
And I like the idea too of, and I don't even know if the city of Dubuque does this, but they're dealing with a lot of volume that we're not dealing with. But if we could at the very least take our two districts and then identify what properties within them are contributing and non-contributing, because that's that early point of departure. If you're in an historic district but you don't have a contributing property, then you go on a different path. But if you are, then you know you're subject to different type of design review. You're eligible for incentives. I mean, if we could get the maps with that information kind of parsed out in GIS, I mean, I think that would be immensely helpful.
And I think we already have it.
Yeah.
I
But I doubt it distinguishes between contributing and non-contributing. It's not, it may, but I didn't.
So in this map, this shows contributing and non-contributing.
Oh, yeah.
The white versus gray.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. And then,
White ones.
Sort of opaque.
let me find that other link I wanted to show you. Oh, crud.
Say 152 pages in modern and something PhD dissertation.
Okay, here's one.
Dry.
Sorry about that. I think I have it electronically, but I'll put it on this.
I don't know. Sorry. Want me to look?
Oh, there you go.
So this is from the 2003 inventory, and this was done, I think, when Chapter 31 was revised. So this actually does show your contributing and non-contributing properties.
Right.
Do we need to update it then? Or,
There's only one
Yeah.
that changed.
okay, only one?
Yeah, where a house burned and they tore it down, built a new one.
New one, yeah.
So it's a matter of someone being able to access this quickly, saying, are they contributing, are they non? And
Yeah,
go from
right.
there.
I mean, this is where I think it'd be, great to hear from developers. I mean, and how do you, if you were thinking about incentives, what's the easiest way for you to find out whether that property will be eligible for tax credits? I don't know if that's through GIS or if it's just a property lookup or whatever, but
Since it's a limited number of properties, you just probably
And
enter it.
yeah.
Oh, I'm talking about a couple hundred.
one thing we were talking about too is how do you determine if your property is subject to, there's the contributing map, but how do you decide if you even are in the historic district, And so Ray mentioned that in the beacon information, if your property is in the overlay district, it shows you're in the overlay historic district. So there again, that would be an easy link for somebody to just take and type in their property address and highlight that they're in the overlay district.
In reading Chapter 31, another comment I had is we do distinguish between local landmarks and National Register, but I think I've seen this in other places where there's a lot of confusion about what each of those represents, and even more confusion if they overlap. And I think as we redevelop the website, if we could start to very clearly identify a district or an individually listed property as being one or the other or both, I think that would clear up a lot of confusion down the road too.
And then I also found this document that was a nice explanation. Let's focus. I don't know why it's kind of blurred. It's about demolition of historic garages.
Mhm.
And so it goes through the factors for demolition of a contributing garage. And then it included a map and
Right.
some photos at the bottom. So there again, we have this map from that point in time that shows the contributing garages. But I like the fact that it kind of talks about the whole process too.
Mhm.
So it's already done. We can add it in easy, you know. If we
Yeah,
want.
it's a matter of getting that out there so that people have easy access to it, I think.
Right. It makes sense if we have the resources already, just try to format it in a
Right.
way that works for everybody.
The text of the chapter 31 seems to be very geared toward the residential, and now we've got this new Main Street. Do we
But
need to
no,
update?
it's not really covered because that's not a local and it's not
Oh,
covered by our controls.
And that would be something,
They
like
don't
you
have
said, we would
access.
need to make it
That's
clear.
part of the, I mean, when I read the one paragraph blurb about our commission, it said, and there's a representative of the residents of each designated district. Well, we now have 2 designated national districts, but still only 1 locally designated district. And so I think we need to clarify, because I think the code is really only talking about the local.
Yeah,
designated.
I think they mentioned council designated district, which does make that
Okay.
distinction. But again, I mean, I think
But
local landmark, national register.
Yeah.
Right,
Clear.
right. So one thing too with the National Register listings, I was just kind of curious if, so this is what we have now. So the way we show the National Register listings is this way, and it's a picture with just the title, and that's all we have in there. But the pictures are great. But what, and then at the bottom, there's a link to the National Park Service site. Well, what I found was that if you here we go. If you go to the National Park site, it, like for Agriculture Hall, it has all these pictures in addition. So I don't know if it's of any value to us to try to link this additional information to our national listing when there's a link already, but it's not something probably people are gonna,
well, they aren't going to know what they'll
Fine.
find by going to it.
right.
And you showed the series of little, are those something that you can click on and get a bigger?
No,
Okay,
no, right now, this is static and you can't,
okay.
there's no additional information on these from, other than just what you see.
I think it'd be excellent to have those be a hotspot that you just, or a link that you just click on and get more information on them.
Yeah.
Would you want
I
to just
agree.
have the pictures, or would you also want to have this, like, this is the nomination form for that agricultural hall? Would that be something to add to, or is that helpful?
National Register nominations can be pretty darn dry. And I mean, in the interest of completeness, we could certainly include a link to each nomination, I think what I'd almost rather see is if somebody had the time, extract the statement of significance from those nominations so that you can just look and see why that property is historically significant.
Yeah.
I mean, nominations are good, and I'm kind of a nerd. I do read them, but they're painful at times, and they're old. I mean, a lot of these are date back to late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
But I think the additional pictures would be of more interest to people than the document. But I think it's always good to be able to have the document, a way to get to the document.
Yeah.
But I agree
Adding the
that
pictures, I think, would be very
that
doable.
pulling out the pertinent text
That would be a
that
little bit more.
says the
difficult.
significance.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of pages to these that you just sort of leaf through when
Yeah.
you're going through them.
And they're poorly scanned, and
Yeah.
they don't look very nice.
So this was a summation that was there, but I don't see that it has what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
these are just tags from the nomination for
Okay.
indexing purposes. I think you'd have to go into the nomination,
Oh,
extract it by hand.
I gotcha. Okay.
So those nice color photos are easy to get? The nice color photos?
The photos should be easy to get. Yeah, we could just download them from the National Park Service and then add them up to our listing and maybe enlarge our pictures so
Right.
that, 'cause they seem
Well,
kind of,
Yeah, kind of.
they're
They're
kind
kinda
of small.
small.
I mean, we don't have a lot of pictures that we're showcasing, so maybe we should
Right.
Yeah.
beef it up.
Yeah.
Make it
Or
prettier.
just- Yeah, I mean, I think any one of us, we probably have photos of these buildings. I have a lot of photos of these buildings, and I'd be happy to share, but the Park Service photos are just in a PDF too. I don't think they're standalone JPEGs or anything.
No.
So just, yeah.
So, and they're web quality, so that's not
Yeah,
going to be,
yeah.
but they are going to have to be web quality.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
it's probably exactly what we need.
Mhm.
And then if you do have other pictures you want added, I guess that's something that we could get to at a later phase. So let's talk about financial incentives. There was a separate, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of bouncing all over here.
That's probably
In Dubuque,
with the financial incentive. I agree, that gets people's attention faster than anything.
they had a separate link to financial incentives where they talk about things. So I like that it's kind of a standalone part of their historic preservation that talks about the financial incentives. What we have, which is kind of interesting, is we have it under our downtown facade assistance. We have, under further information, we have State Historical Society of Iowa grants, tax incentives for rehabilitation, downtown facade grant. So we kind of have it embedded in this.
So
and
it's somewhere in the website, but not where
It's-
people.
It's here
might be
under
looking.
Right.
downtown facade assistance and not anything under historic
I would tell
preservation
you.
Okay.
currently.
Well, right, and that's confusing too, because
Yeah.
the historic rehabilitation tax credits, is state and federal, not just for facades. I mean, they're for other parts of the building. So, I mean, if, I would like to see the preservation specific incentives on the preservation site.
I think
We have a downtown district. We were just talking about this. We have a downtown district now. Those are all income producing properties for the most part. So they're all nominally eligible for these incentives. We need to promote that, I think.
Right. I agree. So another interesting thing is talking about the history of Ames. Right now, we don't even have a link to the Ames Historical Society under our stuff. So there again, that's an easy link to add in because they have so much about the history of Ames and so forth. We don't need to repeat all that, we can rely on what they've done. And they are an extension of the city in the sense that the city helps fund them.
I would agree with that. They do a fantastic job. I don't want to steal their thunder.
Right. Another idea might be some frequently asked questions, and this is something we'd have to develop a little bit, and so we can come back with that maybe next time. There's some ideas from other places, what they've included, but I always find those kind of interesting as a way to just understand processes or basic information. Do you guys have any thoughts on that right now?
About the COA?
No, about the frequently asked questions. Adding a section on that.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to go through any of that tonight particularly. That would have to be developed.
As
But I don't
FAC
think
is
it'd be a
something that
big
kind of comes
deal.
afterwards, after everything's up there and everybody's gone through the process, and then the questions that came up in that process are usually what go on to that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's like the period on the end of the sentence, you know?
I think some of the obvious ones, though, would be my property's on the National Register. What does that mean?
Right.
My property's
Right.
in the local district. What does that mean? Can I get some money to rehabilitate my property? I mean, how do I go about that process? I mean, those would be
Basic.
no-brainers.
Yeah, the basic ones.
Yeah, so maybe we can bring that back at the next meeting, and maybe we can have some of this up already to respond to or see what you think.
Okay.
Um,
Certainly sounds like a good goal.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to have some of these things done before you meet with council. Just because then you can talk about things that you've done that you've wanted to do and things that you're still wanting to do or need their support to do.
Do we have any information on the current website about our CLG status?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
I think that would be useful too.
Okay. You're taking good
And then with
notes,
this,
JP.
the COA,
Right.
I guess you were saying that you like graphic representations of processes, and I'm wholly in agreement with you. I think the COA process to show a flow chart would be great.
Well, what we show, what we have there now,
Yeah, the timeline, I know.
Yeah,
Here we
that
go.
one would be good.
this is kind of helpful, I think. It's kind of the way we handle a lot of our applications, that we will include something like this. So this is kind of a timeline without the arrows and the boxes and some of those flow charts can just be crazy. But this just says, your submittal date is determined by the applicant, and within 3 days, you will find out if your application's complete. That's real standard practice for our department. And then staff review would start immediately after that, and staff would send comments if there's so if it's administratively approved, staff would send approval or comments to the applicant by the Friday of the following week. So we have some time limited goals of when we have to comply. And then if it's going to the Historic Preservation Commission, then when it would go. And of course, that depends on when they apply and when the next commission meeting is and so forth. So it's kind of a timeline. Do you think this works?
I mean, I think it works. To my mind, it starts late in the process. I mean, in the column on the far left, it's already determine that they're going to go through the COA process. I'd like to start at day one. I mean, am I in an historic district? Yes or no? Yes. Am I a contributing or not contributing process? Yes or no? And have it branch off like
Nice.
that, just to make it as, again, easy as possible.
More decision tree type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
This schedule is included with the application? Is that where this is?
This
This
is
is
included
just on
with
the
the
website.
application.
So it's not on the website as a separate,
It's a separate link on the website.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is, yeah, it is separately.
yeah, so having information, having the before this.
So this is what the application looks like. So it says what the process is, but I see what you're saying. You're going back to that question, am I in historic district? Do I need to apply?
And I mean, I understand we're not seeing, 100 of these a month, the COAs. So, I mean, we have to weigh, the time and effort it would take to develop what we're talking about versus the actual benefits. But, I also think that maybe if the process were easier, we would see more people perhaps
Right.
investing in their property.
This is survivor bias.
Yeah, it is, exactly.
I think what we can do is we can start and include some of the things we've talked about that are kind of low hanging fruit, not too much time involvement to get to that point. Some time, obviously, but I think what you were talking about, Ted, would take more time
Well, I
to
understand.
actually do
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
I don't know that we can get there for that at that level, but what we can do is see if what we come up with is satisfactory or if it needs to be beefed up further. And then if it does, then that's something that can be addressed too with the council or with the budget.
Yeah, I think it's partly you've got to figure out what you can do without having to go after a budget,
Right.
a budget item for it. What can be done just as minor work,
Right.
and what would actually need. So if we can pursue what can be done without a budget item, and then get some idea what it would take what kind of budget we'd be talking about. So I think pursuing some of the, like you said, low-hanging fruit first helps you to define what you would have to be asking for money
Right.
to accomplish.
Okay.
I don't know if there's not a sense of urgency, but again, I would return to the downtown district that we have now. I mean, this, the time is right to start promoting the rehabilitation of properties downtown, and if what we're talking about could make that process easier for those property owners, then I think that's something that City Council needs to understand. I mean, it's a good time to be doing this.
Okay.
That's my 2 bits.
So with all of our applications, this is kind of standard practice where we have this kind of cover sheet and staff phone numbers and so forth. So this is very typical. So it's real basic what we are asking them to supply, and really staff does all the legwork and getting it to be an agenda item for you to review when it rises to that level of review.
See, I think that's something in itself that could be promoted better. My experience when I was shopping for a house in the historic district was that realtors were trying to steer me away from it, saying how intimidating it was.
Oh,
And I think there's a need for the city to just sort of say, hey, we'll walk you through this process. Because I think a lot of people are just somewhat intimidated by the going out there. I mean, because, I think the ones that do get involved in it, I think do find that they get a lot of help. But I think there's a lot of other people that just don't really even attempt anything because they are put off by how, lack of information. But-
Right, it seems complicated.
Yeah.
It's not as complicated as it appears to be.
So going back to Dubuque, they have some benefits of the historic districts. That'd be pretty easy to take some of their verbiage and make it our own. But I think there again, that kind of speaks to the tax incentives and the grants and other benefits,
Right.
whether you're a local district or a national register district.
I think we make some very general statements about property values and stuff
Yeah.
in ours, but they're just sort of theoretical type of thing.
Well, I think a lot of it's borne out in the research. I mean, about
Yeah.
property values and stuff, but yeah, I mean, these are generic. I mean, these are not specific to Ames by any stretch. The one thing I was looking at the web page where we talk about the commission and we talk about those kind of generic benefits of preservation. The one thing I'd like to add to that is just there's no mention of sustainability. And in the preservation world, everybody's talking about sustainability and preservation, both at the scale of individual buildings, but also at urban scales. And I think just to get that word in there on the website would be advantageous. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Yeah, this is a minor web change, but
How would you like that incorporated in? Do you have anything in mind in particular?
No, I just have,
Okay, well, we'll
Um,
see what we can come up with.
yeah.
Yeah, I think in doing that, what I said before about it's sort of confusing where it refers to representation of each designated district. I think, some of that could just be minor wording clarifications.
I think they made it
wow.
so it would be generic enough that other districts could be added
Right.
and they wouldn't have to amend the code.
But they need to say that it's local, not because now people are all going to be aware that there is now a new district and
I
but
think we
it's,
could do a lot of that with the
national.
webpage. Explain the local versus the other.
right.
And then if we do need to amend the chapter 31, when we get back to reviewing some more of those details, we can see if we think we need to do that. But I don't really.
I don't know that
Public's reading chapter 31. I think they may not look at the website either, but at least there'd be a better chance that they would go to the website.
I don't know that it's a problem with chapter 31. I think it's just our little summary of it
I see.
sort of doesn't distinguish and sort of makes it confusing
Okay.
by we're quoting from the ordinance, but we're ignoring the fact that there's really two processes.
Right. Well, and we didn't have two processes.
Right,
so
right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Have we had CLG grants? Has the commission here had a CLG grant in the past?
We've had CLG grants in the past. Yeah.
Would that be something to consider for the work that we're talking about today?
For a link?
No, no,
Oh,
no,
Get
CLG
a
grants,
grant
right,
for
to do everything that
the
we're,
guidelines, for architectural
yeah, just to
guidelines.
revisit the webpage and update things and provide graphics and everything else.
I think we could certainly look at that. I think we'd first need to know if the council supported it.
Yeah.
Another topic we kind of mentioned before was our comprehensive historic preservation plan. That's 10 years old now. So if that were if there was going to be an update of that, that could be something we would go after a grant for as well. but we would need council direction before we proceeded.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a great idea.
And that might be something you want to talk to council about when you meet with them.
Mhm.
Yep.
So I love the brochure for Old Town.
Mhm.
These are great pictures, and maybe we could capture some of them to throw onto the web page just to make it more graphic oriented. So that's really all I have. I think we've kind of gone through pretty much the information. Does anybody have any other ideas or questions, comments about the webpage?
I noticed on that COA application, the old meeting time was on it. So something very
Oh.
minor, but to change.
Well, no, that's a really good point. Anything else?
No, I think, appreciate you getting into it like you did.
Yeah, I
And
waded through the weeds.
anything that can be done in the before a budget item, I think would love to see some progress made.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
And if there are ways that we can share photos, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the entire group, but I'm a nerd. I'm out there photographing buildings all the time, and I have a whole, and they're not great photographs, but they're photographs, and they're recent. And if you guys want anything, I'm happy to share
Okay,
those.
sounds good.
Yeah.
I've got some too.
Okay, we'll go ahead with the discussion of the Preserve Iowa Summit.
Yeah, we put that on the agenda because it's coming up June 6th through 8th. It will be in Newton this year. Last year we had it in Des Moines, and it was a larger, more national conference that it was kind of joined together with the Iowa conference. So we'd like to know which commissioners would like to go. Depending on costs, we'll have to figure out what all we can pay for, but certainly registration and mileage, we could. And if you looked at the website for the Preserve Iowa Summit, they've got a schedule out there now with the sessions each day. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So has anyone decided if they're going, Ted, are you presenting again?
I am presenting, yeah.
Okay,
I'm interested.
and you're going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be out of town during that time.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, so.
Okay. Shoot.
I would be interested in going on Saturday.
On Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they said they even have a separate registration for Saturday only, if that's the day you can go.
Yep.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Lisa, do you know?
I'll
Yeah.
be out of town Friday and Saturday.
Oh, okay. Do you know, Barry?
It's my anniversary. We usually do something that weekend.
Oh, okay.
D-Day +1, June 7.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, I'll pass the information on about Ted and Peter and Susan, you said you're going to be out of
I'll be out of town.
town, and then Megan, Saturday, I'll pass that on to Vanessa in our office, and we'll get you registered.
Okay.
Yep, get that registration sent in.
Great.
Okay.
Down to commission comments, and I know Lisa has some.
Well, a couple meetings ago, we discussed looking at signage for Main Street with the district, naming the district and showing the importance of that and the significance. And in looking for the old school style, it looks like it's very expensive and also, so anyway, I switched thoughts and I met with the Ames Historical Society, and the chamber people that are doing with the downtown Ames. I met with Sharon and Judy, and kind of have been brought to the more modern idea of like the depot sign that's currently on Main Street. If you've been there, it's a 48-inch by 24-inch mounted laminate that's mounted on they call it alu panel, some kind of thin aluminum, but it's extremely sturdy, long lasting. And that portion of it isn't very expensive. So if it needs updating, if it does get destroyed somehow, and then it's on this really fancy, sturdy steel stand. And so the stand's expensive, but again, you can replace the top panel. And like the stand is around when that other one was put in, it was about $745, and the top portion $185.
Oh, that's not bad.
So the whole thing for $1,000, when we'd probably look at $3 to $5, for the old tiny ones. And on this one, since it allows for full graphics, it can be beautiful and informative, and we can have, interns, and I think it's a great opportunity to get more people in the community involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do, my broad idea is the two at different ends of Main Street, one being the northeast side of Douglas, because that's kind of the hub of the beginning of downtown. And then one further somewhere by the bank or Maud, somewhere in there. But that the views on the images that would be portrayed there would, you could like look up from the pictures on, the pictures on the sign, and look up and then see that current view. So that would be fun. So I thought, kids would like that too. But that just gives us an opportunity to tie in the architecture that we've got the exploring Ames Pass architecture. We've got the plaques in the buildings, and this would help tie in that whole, the focus on architecture that we want. We want people to pay attention to the architecture, and this would be another way to do that. And pretty. So that was what I had kind of come up with. I don't know if we need to kind of make that what we need to do for next step, but it's much more affordable, I think, doable. And that's what I have.
I like the newer look.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's much better for information.
right, right.
In terms of our budget, we have an amount that is just generic education. Would that be what that would come out of, as well as going to conferences, or?
Well,
How-
there's education and training, and we have, we use money out of there for the award plaques each year. So, that's something we could look at for funding with that money. It kind of depends on how much is left. There's also, the plaque money for the downtown buildings with the Ames Historic Society. And the city provides money to them for that, for reimbursement. I'm not aware of how much they are budgeting for this coming year for the Historic Society for that activity, but, maybe it could come out of that too.
He wasn't thinking in that direction. It was more, we've got photos and,
Yeah.
but it sounded like the funds might not be a thing, at least with the Historical Society, but y'all probably know something I don't, so.
Yeah, we just know that they're managing, the reimbursement for the plaques now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's city council money.
Yep.
That the Historic Society is managing for.
Yep.
For those
us,
plaques, the
basically.
building plaques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there,
So perhaps this could tie in as that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's,
Mhm.
is there a
And their
design process?
contract with the city, I believe it's it's probably July, because that's the beginning of the fiscal year. But they renegotiate their contract every year. So when I was working on the CLG report, I learned a lot about what they're doing and that contract, and included it to what we were doing because it is this Ames. But so it might be appropriate still to get it in their budget for the next go around. I don't know, but I think that's really good legwork that you did. Maybe could you send that picture to Ray and I,
Yeah, of course.
and then we can talk to some of the powers that be that know better about some of these things. I wish I knew more.
Okay.
Who would design it, Lisa?
The Historical Society would help. I can help. We would get that done.
Okay.
Who did the one that you have a photo of?
Judy and Sharon told me. I feel
Ryan.
like they were some students, some just really talented students, but they are beautiful. If you stop by and look at them.
I think the one out at Hoggett, Ryan, I think it's Ryan Larson.
Is he a student or?
No, well, no, he works for the university, but I'm not sure. I know he does photography for them,
Okay.
but I'm not sure what his actual position is.
I feel like it might have been just a really talented intern,
Okay.
but
Could be a great class project for the graphic design students.
Somebody else who
Absolutely.
does design every day is the Daily.
right.
Okay.
They have all the software. I mean, yeah, the newspaper. I mean, I know that sounds a little different, but I mean, it's the same software, and they literally probably do it more than even the kids in the graphic design department because they do it all day long.
Yeah.
So they just need, instead of making something this big, they got to make something this big.
Did the chamber weigh in at all on the location of where you were thinking the signs might go?
No. And this, I feel like I think I met with them right after the chamber was designated kind of as the new liaison with the Main Street. So, no, it was just more about that they would offer their support how they can. And no, I think the general, because I went in thinking that we would have something down at the one end of Main Street and one something around the depot, as kind of hubs. So, and people seem to agree with that. Judy and Sharon like to focus that one, like I mentioned, on that the northeast side of Douglas, in front of Avec, kind of there, because that's a nice there's a garden there for, that would be a nice location for it. And then obviously in the depot area for the other side, they would be getting permission from those people if we needed to do that, or moving it across the street to one of maybe the public little gardens that we've got there between the sidewalk and the street, that something could go.
So you're thinking like a north and a south
Yeah.
instead of a east and a west?
No,
Oh, no.
no.
East and west, but on the corner, on those intersections.
Okay.
Like, so on the east intersection, the northeast corner, and then on the west intersection or the west area,
Okay.
either the north or the south side of the
Gotcha.
street. That hasn't kind of been
Okay.
determined yet, but
So like that.
yeah.
Maybe consider designing them in pairs instead of identical twins. So each one says something a little bit different that might be a little bit more relevant to its location.
That's what it would be. It would
Okay.
just be
Okay.
unique.
Yeah,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, they'll feature photos looking on that end
Right,
of Main
okay.
Street. There won't be as much for the west side, which will make it a little more difficult, but there's tons of information for the east side.
Well, but everything that's there on the west side is now historic. I mean, it's like,
Right.
it's all
Right?
over the 50-year
Yeah.
period. It's
Well, we'll
just,
definitely have enough.
I mean, it's not 150,
Mhm.
but it's
Yes, true.
50,
Qualifies. Mhm. I was just noticing on the side of the old theater, the old tiles up
Yeah.
there are so beautiful.
Yeah.
Avocado green.
Yeah.
Other commission comments?
Should we welcome Megan here.
Yes, certainly.
Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
What is your background?
I'm a librarian,
Okay.
but I've just had a lifelong interest and love of historic buildings. So
Okay.
Librarian here at the public
Yeah.
library.
Yep.
Great. Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Welcome to our group.
Thanks.
Merry band of misfits.
Yeah. Do we have staff comments?
We do. First of all, wanted to remind you that we had the awards presentation
Mhm.
and proclamation for May being Historic Preservation Month. And that will be on April 23rd.
Right.
And the city council starts at 6 p.m. So usually that's like one of the first things, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
early in the meeting, like about the second item.
Okay.
Yep. And Peter, can you come accept
I'll
the
be
award?
here.
Okay, great.
And I'll get with you, Peter, after the meeting. I wrote up some stuff, but I'd like you to see what you think of it. I haven't given it to the mayor yet, and it's just kind of a 1 page or 1.5 page cheat sheet for him. I think he'd like it to be briefer probably, but we could at least provide that and he can edit it, I guess, if he feels the need. Go ahead, Ray.
Well, we wanted to welcome Megan too. Welcome
thanks.
to the commission. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And we do a short orientation for new members, so I'll talk to you about that
Okay.
maybe after the meeting.
Sounds good.
But glad to have you.
Thanks.
Hopes if I push the right button.
The orientation, I remember. The lawyer telling you thou shalt not.
Do you want to speak to that? Well, you guys had asked for a COA update at every meeting. So I think just under staff comments, that's a good time to do it. We went through the 2018 COAs and updated it. This is slightly different from what you've seen before in that the last column on the right says status. And you can see which items have been completed. And also we have had 2 extensions that were granted. In Chapter 31, it does allow staff to give a 12-month extension on the planning and housing director to make that determination. And then accordingly, we have 2 items that are, well, one, a building permit was just issued, so I don't think any construction has started on that one, but the permit's been issued. And then the bottom one is nearly complete. And I don't know, Peter, if you feel like it would be helpful to share what we share with you to the neighborhood association leaders, if that would be something for Old Town neighborhood. I think that would be
Okay.
your discretion if you think it would be something they would be interested in. I don't think it's really appropriate to put something like this on the website.
Okay.
I haven't seen that in other cities where they put it out there. And the people that would be most interested would be the Old Town neighborhood.
Okay. I'll go ahead and share it with the board of our association,
Okay.
and there's a couple people that had gotten a COA, but I don't think have moved on it, that I'll talk to them and see if, because I would assume coming back a second time, hopefully could be a fairly expedited process. I mean, even,
Right. And
Yeah,
we don't
they're
charge a
beyond
fee
the
for the
1 year
first time,
extension,
and we
but-
don't charge a fee for the second
Yeah.
time.
okay. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention was that we talked about having a speaker from the state, and And I did contact the state and they recommended looking at maybe August or September. And so I said, that sounds great. Tell us what you have available. We'd like a Monday in August or September, Monday evening, and I didn't hear anything back. So I think I need to contact them again. I think they're probably busy getting ready for the June conference and so forth.
Yeah.
But I'd like to have a date nailed down so we can get the
Well,
word out. And
Of the 2 months, I'd say we'd prefer September,
Mhm.
which would let students come and sit in on it or whatever, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think there would be too much of a preference either way, except just we would have good daylight either way. So
Yeah.
we could do like what you said about it, a little bit of a walking tour at some point. So maybe we can just see what their schedule is and what works for them.
Okay.
But I'll keep that in mind if we'd prefer September. That's all I have.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
Appreciate that. Are there any other items to come before the commission? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.